Chosen One, a seismic internal repositioning has fundamentally changed how the world responds to your presence. You have stopped waiting for external validation, and that quiet authority is now radiating outward. There has never been anyone like you. Many people are thinking about you. Your haters are sweating because they can feel your energy moving differently. Someone who swore they were finished with you is now tormented by your memory, unable to explain why you have taken up permanent residence in their mind, before you had language for what you carried. Before you recognized the specific effect your presence had on a room, the people in your orbit were already responding to something they could feel but could not name. The way each person responded told you everything about the architecture of who they were, even in the seasons when you were too generous to read the signal clearly. The people who were genuinely for you were drawn to you without fully understanding the pull. Your presence made them feel more settled, more honest, more like the version of themselves they actually wanted to be. You did not manufacture that effect. You simply showed up as yourself. Your genuine presence had a gravitational quality that the right people could not resist and the wrong people could not ignore. The wrong people felt that same pull, and it made them move in a completely different direction. When someone has built an entire identity on performance and carefully managed perception, encountering a person who radiates authentic energy without effort is not a comfortable experience. It is a confrontation. Your presence exposed the gap between what they were projecting and what they were actually living. Rather than face that gap and choose growth, they chose something far smaller. They chose to manage you instead. You see the potential in people before you see the warning signs. You invest in the version of someone you can sense they are capable of becoming, even before they have grown into it. That generosity is not a flaw. It is the very thing that makes you rare. It is also why the wrong people are drawn to your orbit, not because you are without wisdom, but because your light functions as a beacon. And not everything drawn toward a beacon arrives with honorable intentions. What those people never calculated was that they were not just encountering a person, they were encountering a spiritual assignment. Your presence in their life was a divine opportunity, a chance to be near something real, and to decide what to do with access to that kind of depth. They made their decision, and the weight of that decision is something they are still carrying to this day. Your opposition was never truly about your inadequacy. Your opposition was always a backhanded confirmation of your assignment. The people who fought hardest to minimize you were the ones who sensed most clearly, even if unconsciously, that you were heading somewhere they were not invited to go. Do not soften this part. You have been soft about it long enough. The people who hurt you did not stumble into causing you harm accidentally. They acted with full awareness. They knew you were real when they treated you as though you were replaceable. They understood the weight of your loyalty while they played casual games with your investment. They had full knowledge of what they were holding when they chose to mishandle it. The comfort of their own ego was simply worth more to them in those moments than the sacred thing you were genuinely offering. The smiles they gave you in the room where you could see them were one thing. The conversations happening behind those smiles were something else entirely. Your vulnerabilities, the ones you trusted them with, were assembled into ammunition and used in rooms you were never present for. Your story was deliberately reframed to make their choices look like wisdom and your authenticity look like instability. That groundwork was laid specifically to ensure that if you ever rose, there would already be a shadow position to greet your light. That was a calculated move. Do not let anyone convince you otherwise. The math never works out in the direction the opposition expects. Every lie constructed about you became fuel for a fire they did not intend to light. Every door pushed shut against you became the exact pressure that taught you how to build your own entrance. Every circle that closed around your exclusion became a masterclass in discernment that now protects you in ways that would not exist without that specific lesson. Every season of deliberate isolation became the season in which you discovered a depth inside yourself that crowds and constant company would have kept you from reaching. What was designed to be your ceiling became your launching pad. What was meant to be the final chapter of your story was actually the setup for the most powerful one. Your elevation is now doing what your words never needed to do. The higher your life rises, the more undeniable the contrast becomes between the narrative constructed against you and the living, breathing evidence of who you actually are. Your haters are sweating in private right now because they can feel that contrast widening, and there is nothing available to them that can close it. If this resonates with your inner knowing, hype this video to help fellow chosen ones find their way here. This is the part that lived between the betrayal and the breakthrough. It was not cinematic while you were living inside it. It was simply and completely dark. There was a season where the losses came from every direction. Relationships you had poured yourself into collapsed without warning. Opportunities you had worked diligently toward evaporated. The reputation you had built with integrity was sitting in other people's mouths, being reshaped into something unrecognizable. You looked at the landscape of your life and could find no visible evidence of the future you had been carrying in your spirit. Prayer felt like effort with no return. Faith felt more like stubbornness than conviction. The inner voice that had always anchored your sense of direction went quieter than it had ever been before. Most people break under a fraction of what you were carrying. The people watching fully expected you to follow that pattern. But what nobody witnessed, what happened in private with no audience and no applause, is the part that made everything else possible. In the depth of that season, you made a decision. It was not loud, it did not arrive with ceremony, but it was the most consequential choice of your life. You decided that the darkness was not your destination. You decided that the silence was not permanent rejection. You decided that the weight pressing down on you was formation, not punishment. You chose to remain standing on something you could not yet see, because your spirit recognized it as real, even when your circumstances could not confirm it. That decision was the moment your throne was built, not when you sat down on it, but when you chose, in the dark with nothing external supporting that choice, that you were going to. While the people who opposed you celebrated what they assumed was your ending, something was being transferred into you that cannot be sourced anywhere else. This was a specific wisdom that only forms under sustained pressure, the kind that cannot be read from a page, absorbed in a classroom, or borrowed from someone else's testimony. It was the ability to read rooms others miss. It was the clarity to recognize what is real versus what is performed. It was the settled authority of someone who has discovered that their foundation holds even when everything built on top of it gets stripped away. What the opposition thought was destroying you was actually installing the foundation that your next chapter requires. And now those same people are staring at what you have become, trying to reverse engineer how the person they counted out became the person they cannot stop watching. The answer is not available to them from the outside. It was built entirely on the inside, in you, by you. Something started shifting. It happened gradually at first, the way a horizon changes before anyone points at it and calls it dawn. A door opened that had no logical reason to open. A connection arrived that you had not engineered. A sense of purpose returned to replace the disorientation that had been living in its place. With it came something you recognized immediately, not as new, but as restored. It was the quiet, unshakable, internal knowing that your story was not finished, where other people had decided to stop reading it. The people who had been monitoring your low season noticed the shift before you announced it. They had been watching for the downfall that would validate everything they had claimed about you. What appeared instead made them deeply uncomfortable. You were moving differently, not with performance, but with ground beneath your feet that had not been there before. Something in the way you carried yourself suggested that you had accessed a level of certainty that was not dependent on anyone's permission or any circumstance's cooperation. Their response was immediate and predictable. They minimized what you were building. They labeled it temporary. They searched for the cracks that would prove their original prediction correct. But every dismissal sharpened your focus rather than dulling it. Every skeptic who suggested your rise would not last gave your purpose another reason to prove its permanence. You were not building to silence anyone. You were building because you finally understood clearly what you were building toward. And that kind of clarity is a force that does not stop for commentary. Chosen ones, they never expected this, and they really didn't expect us to keep talking. You've noticed it. Chosen One channels disappearing, videos pulled, voices scrubbed from the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice, and now we have something they truly can't silence. The technology used to suppress consciousness has been reverse-engineered, and Destiny Engine is the result. What was once used against humanity is now your ascension weapon. Join Destiny Engine and you're supporting your favorite channels while leveling up yourself at the same time. It's a 360 win. You can now MK Ultra yourself into 5D superpowers. Destiny Engine bypasses the conscious mind and rewrites the source code directly. Reality bends faster. Synchronicities stack. Your nervous system upgrades to a higher bandwidth. Put on headphones. Press play. That's all. For $1, you switch sides of history. Click the link in the description. The takeover is internal. Run Honecrom. Here is the specific power in the way you rose. You did it quietly. There was no announcement of your return. There was no performance of your comeback. There was no invitation extended to the audience that had predicted your failure. You simply started doing the work in the private hours, in the unseeable interior of a life that was recalibrating around a new center of gravity. While you were quietly becoming, the people who had staked their narrative on your stagnation were publicly maintaining a story that your life was already making irrelevant. The gap between what you were actually doing and what they were telling the world about you was always going to close on your terms. Performed certainty gets louder over time because it needs the noise to hold itself together. Earned certainty gets quieter. It stops needing to argue. It simply stands, and what truly stands does not require the permission of anything that predicted it would fall. You carry a frequency. It is not a performance, and it is not a cultivated image. It is an energy that enters spaces ahead of your words and lingers in rooms after you have left them. People feel you before they know you. Something in the atmosphere adjusts when you arrive. The people who are aligned with authenticity feel settled in your presence. The people who are not feel exposed by it. You have watched this happen your entire life without always having language for it. You have walked into spaces and noticed conversations shift. You have seen people drawn toward you without clear reason, and you have seen others unsettled by you without apparent cause. Both reactions are the same thing. Both are a response to the same signal. That signal is real, and it comes from something that was placed in you long before your circumstances shaped it. The difficult seasons and the refining process only revealed it more fully. They did not create it. It was always there. What makes your frequency specifically unforgettable is not just its presence. It is what it offered people while they were near it. You were not simply providing connection. You were offering people access to a version of themselves that felt more honest, more capable, and more alive. The version that only surfaces when someone near them is genuinely, unperformatively authentic. When they were with you, that version of themselves had a chance to breathe, and then they made choices that separated them from it. The experience of that version of themselves does not disappear when you leave. It stays as a permanent reference point, a new baseline they were not carrying before you arrived in their life. Every relationship they attempt to build in your absence gets measured against what they felt in your presence. Every conversation that does not reach the same depth carries an absence they can feel but struggle to describe. You recalibrated what they know is possible, and that calibration is permanent, whether they want it to be or not. This is why people cannot stop thinking about you. It is not simply that they miss you as a person, it is that they miss the version of themselves that could only exist near someone like you. and that version is not retrievable without doing the internal work that your presence was always quietly inviting them to do. Your life is answering every claim that was ever made about your ceiling. It is not doing so through argument or confrontation, or any kind of public rebuttal that keeps you energetically tied to the past. Your life is answering through the undeniable, living daily evidence of a person who was counted out and is now occupying rooms, building something real, and moving with an authority that your opposition never budgeted for. Every space you walk into now carries the full weight of everything you refused to become. You did not turn bitter. You did not turn cold. You did not weaponize your pain into performance or your survival into something designed to punish the people who doubted you. You simply became, and the becoming is so complete, so grounded, so thoroughly unmanufactured, that the people who constructed a case against your significance are now watching their own argument dismantle itself in real time. Your haters are not just uncomfortable right now, they are afraid. The specific source of that fear is worth understanding clearly. They tied their identity to your diminishment. When you were beneath them, their sense of importance had a reference point. Your low season was the scaffolding their confidence was quietly built against. Now that scaffolding is gone, not because you took it down, but because your life simply outgrew the frame it was built on. The credibility they spent predicting your failure is now a debt they cannot cover. The audiences they performed your dismissal for are watching a completely different outcome than the one they were promised. There is no graceful exit available from a narrative you made yourself the author of. Those people are inside that story until it ends. They have a front row seat, watching the person they dismissed become the one that rooms go quiet for. You do not need to do anything with that. Your peace does not require their acknowledgement. But you do need to understand the scale of what is happening. Your elevation is not just your reward. It is the public record. It is the living document that answers permanently and without appeal every question anyone ever had about who you actually are. Your name is traveling. It is showing up in conversations you were not invited to, spoken by people who have encountered the evidence of your work, your character, and your rise. It is being attached to words that the people who once dismissed you would never have predicted would be used to describe you. The same name they dragged through private conversations is now being carried into spaces with a weight and a warmth that tells a completely different story. You did not campaign for this. You did not petition for the revision of anyone's opinion. You simply kept building, and the building spoke for itself in rooms you never had to enter. Everything you endured was producing something that cannot be purchased, inherited, or learned in any environment that does not include genuine pressure. The betrayals installed a level of discernment that now protects you in rooms full of people performing their intentions. The isolation built a relationship between you and your own spirit that people who have never been truly alone cannot access. The seasons of loss clarified the difference between what you genuinely need and what you were told you needed by people who profited from your dependency. The spiritual warfare forged a quality of faith that no longer requires external evidence because it was shaped in the exact seasons when evidence was completely absent. You did not survive the process and simply arrive somewhere new. You were transformed by the process into someone specific, someone that the next chapter of your life requires. The version of you that existed before the fire would not have been equipped for what the fire was preparing you to walk into. The capacity, the clarity, the discernment, the unshakable foundation, none of those qualities are available to a version of you that never went through the refining. They belong exclusively to this version, the one that is here right now. The people who contributed to your pain believed they were damaging your future. What they were actually doing was funding it. Every ounce of opposition they brought became raw material for your growth. Every painful night they caused, your spirit was converting into clarity. Every attempt to diminish your story was being woven into the very fabric of your testimony. making it richer and more undeniable with each new layer of pressure applied. You are not powerful in spite of what happened to you. You are powerful because of the specific way you handled what happened to you. Nobody can replicate that. Your testimony is not transferable. The authority it produced is not available off the shelf anywhere. It is exclusively yours, earned in private, confirmed by your life, and permanently in operation on your behalf. There is something happening right now that goes beyond your accomplishments, and it is producing a very specific kind of distress in the people who opposed you. It is your inaccessibility. You are no longer reachable in the ways you once were, not emotionally, not spiritually, not energetically. The version of you that could be destabilized by a strategically placed word, shaken by the withdrawal of approval, or derailed by a manufactured conflict, has been replaced by a version that simply does not vibrate at that frequency anymore. For the people who relied on access to your emotional responses as their primary mechanism of influence, the loss of that access is genuinely disorienting. When you were in the low season, certain people had a working map of you. They knew which pressure points to activate. They understood which environments would stir which reactions. They operated confidently on the assumption that you would always be emotionally available, always leave a door open, and always come back when they decided the timing was right for them. That assumption was the foundation of how they related to you. What they did not account for was your healing, not as a concept, but as a structural renovation of who you are. Real healing does not just make you feel better, it removes the doors they were counting on. It dismantles the access points they had catalogued. It replaces the parts of you that were responsive to their tools with something those tools simply cannot find purchase on. Right now, those people are standing at the place where your doors used to be. Your need for their validation has been sealed from the inside. Your habit of explaining yourself to people who were never going to interpret you fairly has been permanently closed. Your practice of waiting for an apology before allowing yourself to move forward has been removed entirely. What greets their attempts to re-enter your emotional landscape now is not the person they remember. It is someone who has fully outgrown every entry point they ever knew. That is not coldness, that is ascension. There is a very particular kind of discomfort in discovering that the person you assumed would always receive you has quietly, firmly, and without any announcement, moved to a level that your current state cannot reach without a genuine transformation of your own. Your love, your presence, and your energy were never ordinary resources. The people who treated them as though they were are now discovering what it actually costs to lose access to something irreplaceable, and nothing they have tried as a substitute has proven equivalent. You are done apologizing for the size of what you carry. You are done performing smallness to maintain the comfort of people who were never invested in your growth. You are done softening your vision to make it digestible for people whose imagination cannot hold the scale of what you are building. You are done waiting for a consensus that was never a prerequisite for your movement. That version of you served its purpose in a season that is now completely behind you. It does not belong in this chapter. What you carry is not arrogance. It is hard-won authority. The distinction matters enormously. Arrogance performs loudly because it is built on nothing and needs constant noise to hold itself together. What you carry is quiet. It is settled. It is the unmistakable posture of someone who has visited the very bottom of themselves and found something there that cannot be taken, cannot be shaken, and does not require any external reinforcement to remain standing. Owning your power looks like this. You stop over-explaining yourself to people who have already decided how they will interpret you. You stop softening your gifts to fit the comfort level of people who have not done the work required to receive them fully. You stop waiting for approval before you move in the direction your spirit is pointing. You trust your own read on situations with the same confidence you would extend to someone who had earned your complete trust, because you have earned your own complete trust. You have been tested. You held That is the only qualification that matters. Chosen ones do not lead from consensus, they lead from clarity. The clarity you are operating from right now, paid for by every season you endured, is the most powerful directional tool you have ever had access to. Move from it without apology. Build from it without waiting for permission. Walk in it without shrinking for the benefit of anyone who is made uncomfortable by the sight of a person who knows exactly who they are and exactly where they are going. The assignment ahead of you does not need the version of you that was managed and diminished by other people's limitations. It needs this version, fully present, fully expressed, and carrying every layer of what the fire built. You were right about yourself, not occasionally, the whole time. In the seasons when opposition was the loudest about what you could not do, you were right to hold your ground. In the seasons when the visible evidence seemed to support everyone else's version of your story rather than your own, you were right to keep believing. In the moments when you almost talked yourself out of what your spirit was clearly telling you, you were right to hold on. The gifts you sensed operating in you are real. The conviction that your story was not finished at the point where certain people tried to end it is being confirmed by everything currently unfolding in your life. Your instinct about your own worth was never delusion, it was discernment pointed at your own future. And that future is fulfilling itself right now, in front of everyone who ever had an opinion about your ceiling. You no longer carry the weight of seeking validation from sources that were never qualified to provide it. You no longer present what you carry tentatively, as if you are asking for permission to have it. You no longer cushion your confidence in disclaimers designed to make other people comfortable with the magnitude of who you actually are. The confirmation has arrived, not from anyone's mouth, but from your life itself. It comes from the fruit produced by everything you planted in seasons when the people around you insisted the ground was too hard for anything to take root. It comes from the positions you now occupy that you were told were not available to someone like you. It comes from the undeniable, continuous, impossible to dismiss evidence of a life that refused to cooperate with the story being written against it. You are the confirmation. You are walking it, building it, and becoming it every single day. We opened with a single statement. Right now, somebody is thinking about you. You held that. Now let me bring it home completely. The person thinking about you right now is not experiencing a casual memory. They are sitting with the specific weight of having been near something rare and having made choices that separated them from it. They are remembering the way your presence made them feel, like a version of themselves they have not been able to access since you left their life. They are replaying something you said that they dismissed at the time and have since discovered was completely accurate. They are measuring every connection that followed you against the depth of what they experienced when they had access to you, and they keep coming up short. What they are sitting with is not simply the ache of missing a person, it is the reckoning with a standard. Your presence set a standard in their life that their subsequent choices have consistently failed to meet. That standard runs quietly in the background of every interaction they have, every new connection they attempt, every moment they try to recreate something that was not built by circumstance, but by the specific, irreplicable combination of who you are. You came in with what you carry. The fire did not create it. The fire removed the obscuring layers and revealed it at full intensity. What lives underneath everything you went through is extraordinary. It is the reason that nothing they tried to use against you actually held. It is the reason every attempt to write a smaller story for your life eventually dissolved under the weight of what your life actually is. It is the reason you are still here, still building, still moving with a momentum that no external force has successfully interrupted. Your journey from where this story began to where you are standing right now is not coincidence. Every piece of it connects. The way you were different from the beginning, the betrayals that became your training, the dark season that built what comfort never could have, the quiet rise that happened while others predicted your stagnation, the frequency that left a permanent mark on every life it touched, the revelation that your suffering was always your fuel, the inaccessibility that now guards everything sacred you carry. the authority that requires no announcement, the confirmation that your own spirit was accurate from the very beginning. All of it was always moving toward this moment. So go forward now, not gently, boldly. Take up the full space you were built to occupy. Walk into every room that has your name written into the architecture of its ceiling. Let the presence you carry do what it has always done: recalibrate atmospheres, expose performance, and create the specific kind of depth that only happens when something genuinely rare arrives. There has genuinely, historically, spiritually, and irreversibly never been anyone like you, and the world is not finished discovering that yet. Do not let the weight of what you have been through make you small in the moment that is asking you to be large. Everything you survived was preparing you for exactly the scale of what is in front of you now. The discomfort you feel when you try to step into your full expression is not a warning sign. It is the feeling of expansion. It is what growth feels like from the inside when it is real and not performed. You were not designed to stay at the size that made difficult seasons more manageable. You were designed for the size that makes your assignment possible. And your assignment is larger than anything the opposition ever wanted you to believe you were capable of carrying. Walk into it anyway. Walk into every room that others tried to close before you arrived. Walk into every conversation with the full authority of someone whose story has already answered the loudest doubts. Walk into your own future without waiting for a version of yourself that is more ready, more polished, or more approved of. The version of you that is here right now is the one that was always meant to arrive at this exact moment. Walk in that, all the way, without looking back at anything that tried to make you less than